Hey guys, my name is Nathan, and I'm going to tell you a story about how I met God. And it's still unbelievable for me because I love Him so much, and I did not before. And I was raised that way, but I did not love or know God, and now I do. And I want to share it with everybody about how this came about. So I'll just give you a little backstory. We'll start with my parents raised me, my dad, my mom. They both loved me. I wasn't unfortunate, like some folks are, to grow up in a, with parents who beat you or hurt you, But now my mom, she had a lot of love, and I got that from her. And she demonstrated her love all the time to me. And my dad spoke Bible scriptures to me and took us to church. And so I did have a really good foundation there. And but one day they got divorced when I was 10 years old, or they separated and then they divorced a few years later. And I always thought they would get back together, but they didn't. They didn't get back together. And so I was broken from that, and from a lot of other things. And so I chose, when I got older, to go my own way, as many of us do. I didn't care about what God, thought. I thought, well, I'm free to do whatever I want to do, and that's exactly what I did. I didn't consider any consequences, and I lived that teenager life, and I slept with whoever I wanted to sleep with, and I did drugs with whoever I wanted to do drugs with. And my drug of choice was pot, and I ended up doing that for 12 or 13 years. And I was fine with it, and just couldn't think clearly, but to me it was the greatest thing. It numbed any pain that I had. And then when I met the girl who would end up becoming my wife, that was even better. And I didn't have anything to worry about. I never talked to my dad, and sometimes I would talk to my mom, but I never talked to my sister. And I met this girl, and I was 19 and she was 20, and we ended up being together. We ended up marrying, and we were together for 13 years. And somewhere in those 13 years, I began to realize that this may not be forever. And that messed me up, because when I married her, I thought it would be forever, and I had absolute confidence that I would be with her forever, on into eternity. And I thought she was fine with that, and I certainly knew I was. But my wife started to say things, I'd say about 10, 11 years into our relationship. She started to say things like, I can't do this anymore, after we'd have arguments. I mean, we fought, and, so after she said that enough times, I told her that I would go and live with my mom for just a few days and just give us a break. We never had a break. We always were with each other. We went on vacations together. We did everything together. I would say to my wife, "You're my soulmate." And she, whenever I'd say that, would agree, and she'd say it back. I went to my mom's for about 3 days, and during that time, I drew up a behavioral plan that I told my wife that I would draw up, and and it involved how I would change my behaviors and the things that my wife was complaining about what she didn't like about me. A lot of it was that I'd talk about politics, you know, and I would talk about my faith, because as you know, my wife would say, you know, I'm done. I think I'm done with this, or I can't do this anymore. I started to realize, okay, my marriage is breaking, and I need to figure out what to do. And there wasn't anything that I could think of, except every now and again I'd talk to my dad. I mean, very rarely, but I talked to him not too long before my wife had mentioned something like that, and I told him, and he brought up God, as he always did, you know. And I thought, well, I've tried everything else, so yeah, I'll try something spiritual, you know. And so I think I started to pray, and I guess I asked. I remember I asked God, you know, help me with my marriage, you know, and help us, and I don't want to lose her, you know. And so he did, you know. He actually helped me fairly quickly, and I think he started changing. But you know, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for my wife. The things that were changing in me were not enough for my wife. And so when I came back with that behavioral plan, it only lasted, you know, a few days. And then she said, you know, I'm leaving, you know. And she said, I'm leaving, Nathan. And I said, what do you mean? You know, what do you mean? She said, yeah, I'm done, you know, and I'm going to move out in 2 weeks, you know. And I said, no, you know, let's figure this out. And you know, I went through all the stages that you go through, denial and, you know, grief and anger and bargaining, a lot of bargaining, begging, and you know, I said, well, let's go to counseling. And then I tried everything, you know. No, it was too late. You know, she had made a decision, and it wasn't a breakup or a separation. You know, I could look in her eyes and tell. And but I didn't acknowledge that. And for 6 months, you know, she would go to counseling with me here and there, but she was already long moved out. And she would see me or go out to eat with me every now and again. And one day, about the end of that 6 months, I said to her, what are the chances, if you had to pick a percentage, I said to my wife, what are the chances that you would get back to me? And, you know, just give me a percentage, you know? And she said 200% likely that she would not get back with me. And so I let her go, you know, let her go. For some reason that sealed it for me. And after a couple of days of her saying that, I met with her one last time, and I told her, maybe for the first time ever, genuinely with my heart, that I was sorry about my part in the broken marriage, and that although I was willing to continue on forever, that I accept her leaving. I don't agree with it, but that I accept it, and that I forgive her, and that I don't want there to be any hard feelings, and I, you know, I wished her well, and I told her I hope that she has a blessed life, you know. And before, when I apologized, it was always also kind of in the hopes that maybe that apology would somehow bring us back together. But this was an apology, knowing that it was just an apology, and there wasn't anything that was going to come of it besides just freeing me and hoping that she would receive that. And so I never saw her again after that. And you know, after I didn't see her again, the crushing feeling of being alone for the first time in 13 years was weighing down on me, and I met my wife when I was 19 years old, so I wasn't really an adult yet. And when she left, I was 32 years old. And as a 32-year-old man, it was the first time I experienced that I really could remember of being really alone. And so when there was that empty spot on my bed next to me, night after night, I prayed to God. I asked him to comfort me. I had never asked him anything like that before. Just to reassure me. I've been going to church, New Life Community Church I've been going to. And, he immediately responded. I felt this warmth, and this peace wrapped around me. I don't know how to describe it. It was as though everything would be okay in that moment, at least. And that's the only thing. That's all we have is just this moment, So that's all I was worried about, and I went to sleep, and I slept really good. And I woke up, and I started going into church every week, and I didn't know how God existed or how Jesus existed. We can't see him, but when I went to that church, New Life, there's a fellow there named Jonathan Jones, and he's one of the pastors, and I reached out. I encourage anybody to just reach out, if you're broken. These guys reached out back, and I was persistent, and I went there for a few weeks, but eventually, I just went to that pastor's office, and I told him some of my story, and he shed tears with me, and he listened. He loved me, he showed me love. And he said, I'm going to get you connected with somebody that can help you out through this hard time. And he said that he could see how much I was suffering and that he didn't want me to suffer, and I probably never really reached out that much anyway, but, because of my pride. But when I did, I was amazed at what the response was. So God was just moving in this man's life. And then he connected me with this guy, Mark Carlson, who hooked me up with a mentor program. And the next thing you know, I have this guy who is my dad's longtime friend who happens to be going to the same church that I'm going to. His name's Steve Parker. And now Steve Parker, who I always liked and wanted to spend more time with, but he was just always spending time with my dad. He's a lot older than me. Now he's my mentor. And so God worked that together. And then we started meeting all the time. And, one time I was in the front pews and I was crying, and I had my head kneeled down, and I asked God to help me again with being comforted. And again, immediately, Mark Carlson shows up, and he puts his hand on my shoulder. This is another pastor at New Life. He puts his hand on my shoulder, and he says, I want you to know something, that you're a good boy, and don't let anybody ever tell you any different. Now, always worried about how my dad felt about me and wanted him to be proud of me. And here is a man who's about my dad's age, who I never saw as somebody who could necessarily be, intimate or open with emotion. He just didn't strike me as that kind of person. And here he comes out of nowhere right after that prayer and puts his hand on my shoulder and says, you're a good boy, and don't let anybody ever tell you any different. So that was overwhelming. And, and of course I cried, and I appreciated it, and I thanked God. I reconciled my relationship with God that I'd had when I was in second grade. Because of all these things and this life that was coming into me, that suddenly in this broken soul that I had of my relationship in my heart, I started to see all these flowers just start coming up around me everywhere. My work changed, my attitude changed at work. I work at the psychiatric hospital, and I thought of quitting a lot of times because it's just stressful being around people who are having those kind of behaviors, mental illness. Everything changed. I started loving them and having this strength to encourage them and have mercy and compassion on them in a whole new way. God started helping me connect with these people at my work, people with schizophrenia and psychotic disorders and bipolar and depression and PTSD and people who have been abused. God, He helped me come into this work environment every single day and show these people mercy and love them and encourage them and help them and even speak about God with them. He protects me when I'm at work to this day from people who don't want me to talk about what God is doing in this world and what He's doing in me. And He makes these connections with these people when I'm at work. And that never happened before. And, you know, He gave me a friend, too, actually, that, and even actually more than that, to encourage me. It's an answer to prayer. I prayed that God would help me have a friend who was like-minded and was having these things happen in their lives, and who was open to God working in them and changing them. And He gave me Will, who is just the most joyful man that you could ever meet, and he has 4 kids and a wife, and he has so much joy, and he's always laughing, and he ended up working with me at my job, and him and I would meet on Wednesdays after we get off of work, and we'd pray together, and God moved through our prayers. One time we laid hands on a lady who was a nurse there who had chronic back pain, and God healed her completely through us. And this was so new to me, and I didn't think that God would let me be a part of something that big, but he did, and He continues to. And I'm almost certain that God delivered a demon from somebody at my work through me. I mean, I know that schizophrenia has a brain component and that there's abnormalities, but I'm telling you, when you work where I work every day, there are dark things that you see that people are going through, and there are hateful and angry and evil things in this world that want to hurt us, and they were hurting this guy, and I never saw him again after that day, and he had been coming every single week to the hospital, and he was reading the Bible after we were done, and he was asking, he was asking me questions, and so look, God isn't limited to what we think, and He's done extraordinary things in my life, and now I'm working out and I'm writing songs to honor Him, and I've never developed my piano skills before, much less to write for the God of the universe and honor Him and all the things He does. So now I'm writing songs. I'm actively and proactively and productively writing music, and I have these people like Joe and John Paul and Wilma, and these people that are helping me make this video, and I can't keep up with all the things that God is doing. And He gave me a friend named Gregory who paid for my workout, and is personally training me, and we're best friends. And he talks to me about God all the time, and we cry together, and we're not ashamed, to talk about these things and to share about these things, and I've learned so much from him, and now I'm learning so much from Joe, and so it's just going to continue. This has all happened within the last 3 years, and I feel like God's just making up for all the time that I missed without him, and and he's going to do the same in your life, and because you just have to believe, and he's going to use everybody that wants to be a part of what he's doing. And so I encourage anybody watching this video to look at my story. It's not about circumstances. Look, the circumstances are always grim in this world, those things don't always change. Look, I'm still single, I'm still broke, I could go on and on about circumstances that aren't really that great, but I have more joy and more peace in my heart than I could ever imagine when I had all kinds of things, and I had lots of stuff, and I had a wife. I didn't have this kind of peace. And so this life, especially the Christian life, can be very stormy, but the storms are beautiful because they make us grow, and we have to grow, so I appreciate you guys listening, and I hope that your hearts are moved to taking action. Don't wait. This is not something to wait for. Just go at it and love the Lord your God. He's awesome.